Hey there everybody, it's Betsy, and in this video we're going to pick up where we left off the last time with thumbnails. I had done these 5 different designs for my cute little girl carpenter, and it's time to pick one to move forward throughout the rest of the project. So I'm thinking I'm going to use this little girl right here, the little short one with the rather wide head and wide stance. However, her pose is really boring and doesn't say much about her character. So this video is going to be about sketching out your poses. So before I clear my page of all these designs that I don't want, I wanted to just say that it's always a good idea to just keep your original sketches no matter what. Instead of deleting them, I'm just going to duplicate the layer and hide one so that I have that safe and sound, even though I'm not using it. Whoops, I got a little bit of her foot there. Even though you're not using it, you may need to refer back to this sometime, or that might help you with a different character design later on. You never know. So I just like to keep that backup, that if I ever had to look at my old designs, there they are. And then this one I'll name just Cute Carpenter, or maybe Poses, since that's what we're doing. Poses. So I'm going to move her over here just for reference's sake. And the key to doing some good poses, let's kind of talk about that first, is to do poses related to what your character does. So related to character. So what does that mean? It means if your character is, let's say, a scientist, you wouldn't draw them in a pose of baking a pizza. Instead, you would want to do them related to science things. And it's perfectly possible that your science character makes pizza from time to time, but that isn't going to drive what your character is about. So for my character being a carpenter, what is related to carpentry? Well, I had a lot of them with the hammer. I'm going to try to spell it right this time. Hammer. She can be looking at blueprints for her next project. She could be inspecting a broken piece of furniture that she might fix. She can also be doing things that are not necessarily related to carpentry, but just her as a little girl, a cute little girl. So she could just be, you know, sitting. She could be walking. Whoops, walking. Or she could be standing, but in a more informational view. So right now she's just standing straight view, both of her hands on her hips, like there's no view of the backside or any indication of if she is a very flat character like Dexter's Laboratory or Samurai Jack or Powerpuff Girls, or is she going to be more organic and more 3D, more like let's say one of the Disney princesses, for instance. So having this pose is really not helping us, and we're going to make some better ones. So I'm going to get rid of those notes and start sketching out some poses. So I'm trying to think of her original shapes. That she's got a wide head, she's got a tiny little neck, her body is about the same size as her head but just narrower, or I should say the same height as her head, just slightly narrower, although she is pretty round here. And let's say that she is looking at some blueprints. So here's going to be my blueprint paper. And she'll have her thumb come around the side there. Actually, her thumb will be on the inside, right? Sometimes I have to pose my own hands before I can figure out what's happening. So those are going to be fingers. And then her thumb will be on the inside, so we'd see a thumb over there. You can see I'm really scribbly. You might not even know what's going on at the moment. That's okay. As long as when you're drawing, you can see the shapes, that's all that matters. So she's got her overalls. And then her legs are maybe the same size as her body, then plus the cuffs. So I can do another similar height like that. And you can see I've chosen a 3/4 angle, so she's slightly turned. That's always a better angle than just straightforward when you're doing just like character reference, not necessarily model sheets. Model sheets do need a front view. But when we're just kind of checking out her character and what she's like, it's better to have just this little bit of depth. Oh, her feet are flatter than that. I gave her rather flat shoes. I think her neck is getting a little too long, so I'm going to just move her head down. And possibly a little bit more forward as she's leaning to see what these blueprints say. And then she has her bangs on top. Her ears sticking out. Have them going a little bit more down. So there's a pose I could possibly do, or we can have her holding her hammer very proudly like some of those other thumbnails we're doing. Try to sketch a little cleaner this time so you can see how I build up my shapes. Still thinking of those really simple shapes and their proportions. Those legs might be a little bit long. Remember, I was talking about how her pant legs are only about as tall as her body plus the cuffs, so probably only that far. I'll put one flattish shoe right there and one over here. This tangent's not great where the line from this pant leg is flowing right into the back of that foot. So I'm going to try to solve that in a different manner. I kind of like where her feet are placed, so let's move the cuff over to break up that line a little bit more. Let's see, she's holding up her hammer, her prized and favorite hammer, which is very kid-friendly, very rounded. Maybe has an extra big hammering side and not as dangerous hook side. And she has very wide set eyes. Little nose. Happy smile. Those bangs curving in front. And then her pigtails a little more down. One big loop, one little loop. Big loop, one little loop. And then her other hand can just flow down this way. Have her fingers spread apart. And then let's put in her overall shape at the top. And she has the cuffs of her sleeves. Whoops, that one would be going downward since her hand's going downward. This one will curve forward. And she's got a heart somewhere. Double check, yep. Heart on her overalls. I think I liked it when it was on the pocket, so I'll put a pocket there. Maybe an extra pocket over there. So there's a pose we could do with her holding her hammer. We could have her holding her toolbox. Maybe she's walking to her next carpentry job. Wide set eyes, very close nose, cute little mouth, little neck. I tend to put my necks too far forward, so I'm going to move that back just a touch. And her body not much taller than her head, and let's have her walking this time. With those big cuffs, flat shoes. That one's going to bend at the toe. And she's got her, let's see, she'll give her toolbox, 2 belts. I think we'll have her toolbox. So here will be her hand holding on to her handy dandy toolkit. And we might have her favorite hammer sticking out. And maybe a measuring stick, a ruler or something on the other side. Well, something I just thought of, most carpenters have a pencil behind their ear, so I might add that to our character design. Don't be surprised if you have more ideas as you continue with your character design. That's why these sketches are a great way to explore some other options that you might not have been thinking of when we did our first thumbnails. And then this one can be just in a fist, happily going along, or maybe she's carrying something else on that side. We're ready to do some building. So there's 3 poses to choose from, and then I can do one that's maybe just standing there to allow potentially other people who are working on your project to see how she's drawn. Or she could be admiring her handiwork. That sounds fun. Let's say she is maybe not looking up that high. Her arms don't go that far, so maybe she's looking a little bit more down. And maybe she has just built a little birdhouse, or is in the process of building a little birdhouse. So we'll sketch out a little birdhouse quick. Put a little peg on there. Maybe put a little wing, or maybe a heart. Maybe her trademark is her heart. Maybe it'll be easier to see if it's on this side. That it's a birdhouse. And she can hold that with her fingers first, her thumb on the other side. I think it's a little far from her head, so again, that's the convenience of digital drawing, where you can maneuver the pieces together. Her body round, but not that tall. Maybe she'll put a finger to her mouth going, I wonder if I can give them a 2-story house. Her leg's not that long, so we'll end it there. Cuff, cuff, and then her flat style shoes and her pigtails. So now I have my 4 poses to choose from. I'm thinking the one that really just tells people that she's a carpenter is probably the one where she's holding the hammer, because that seems to be the clearest story there. I do like this pencil that I put behind her ear though, so I think I'm going to go ahead and add a little pencil behind her ear. And then we'll take this one to our final. And again, instead of using this exact thumbnail, I'm going to save my work in the poses, and I'm going to copy this one to a new layer so that I can work on it without disturbing my previous work. So actually we're going to call this one Final Pose, and we're going to move the poses layer and the final pose layer into their own folder. I'm going to click on the folder button, get a new folder, and name it Poses. And then we'll stick in the poses that I did as well as the final pose. And we'll get rid of the thumbnail layer there. And actually I don't need to see those poses either. So I just need my final pose. So now I can safely manipulate, change, edit this one with it without, fear of losing it, because I do have my backup saved. This would also be a good time to save your work. So I'm going to hit Control S, save my work. And then I'm going to go ahead and make this one bigger, actual drawing size. Let's say about there. And your thumbnail might get a little blurry when you enlarge it, but we're going to go ahead and draw over it with the final line, so that's fine. So on my final pose, I'm going to take down the opacity down until it's light enough that I can still see it, but it's not going to distract me from my final line. So maybe at about 25%, 22%, something like that. I'll get a new layer and I'll call this one Lines. And you'd want to use the pen tool. If you keep using the pencil tool, you're going to have some problems with coloring later. The pen is a nice solid color, so that's going to help us keep our lines nice and crisp when we go to color. And then up here you'll see your stabilizer, your global settings. This is going to help smooth out your lines. You can try putting it at 40 and then wiggling your pen real fast, and you'll see that it's a little slow, it's a little delayed, but it smooths out your lines. Or if you keep it at 0, it stays right up with your cursor and doesn't smooth it out at all. Now depending on your computer speed, 40 might slow down your computer so much that you can't draw anything. So I like to kind of keep it, somewhere in the middle, around 20, so that I have some smoothing effect, but I can still draw fast, or at least not so slow that I'm not sure where I'm going anymore. So I've got my pen set to about 20, and I'm just going to go around and finalize some of these lines here. I've got a size of 6 for my pen. Whoops, doesn't really look like she's looking at her hammer there. But you can choose whatever line thickness that you'd like. If you're doing a thicker style line, again like Dexter's Laboratory or Powerpuff Girls, then you can take it up to 10 or more. But since I'm just going to ink this with some simple lines, I've got it at 6. Add in some teeth here, and then back up and see if it looks scary a little bit. Maybe we'll take those out and just leave it classic cartoon style, no teeth. So while I'm inking, I like to temporarily make another layer on top of anything that might bump into previous lines. So for example, if I were to draw her hair right now like this, and then I have to erase out this shape, I would have to be very, very careful not to erase the line that I want to keep. So instead of doing that, I just hit New Layer. I've got layer 30 down there. I can make my clump of hair that comes right over her eyebrow. And then I can go ahead and go back to my lines layer, and I can just erase this without being afraid of erasing this line at all. I can just erase what's inside. No problem. And then I can also come back and erase my little pen flares that I no longer want. And smooth it out like that. As soon as I'm done, I collapse the layer with Control E. You can also hit this little button with the arrow on the layers to flatten them, but I like to do it right away because if you leave a whole bunch of unnamed layers in your file, you're not going to know what it is, do you need to keep it, and it's just a hassle. So again, I need to draw a piece of hair that's going to overlap that piece of hair that I just drew. Instead of trying to watch out for the lines, I'm just going to get a new layer, draw my new clump of hair, Then I can go back to my lines layer, get my eraser, erase this without any problem. Can't erase my new piece of hair there. Get rid of that little pencil flare. And then Control E. And now it's all on the same layer again. I'll go ahead and keep inking this, and I'm going to do it in real time, but for those of you who want to skip to the end and see how it turns out, you can go ahead and scroll the video to the timestamp indicated below. So now that I have all of my lines, I like to back up and make one final check and make sure that there isn't anything else that's bothering me, such as right here, her pigtail goes into the same spot as her neck, which makes an awkward tangent. So I'm going to fix that by just bringing that line down a bit more and carefully erasing that old line. Whoops. It's easy to go over, but you just work back and forth until you get your lines to where you want them. So that looks a little bit better. Any other areas that might just kind of stick out to you as being awkward? Just go right back in and change them. Even this little line that's sticking out from the pencil that was left over from the hair, but I don't really think we need that. And I don't even think we need this separation here for the hair. We can just leave it like that, and it makes a cleaner shape. So now that we have the final line work, it's on to the next video to add some color.